This episode is sponsored by Takedown Sportswear. If you want to design your gear your way for you or your team, then you need to try their new 360-degree custom singlet builder. With a ton of options to choose from and no order minimums, what are you waiting for? Visit takedownshop.com/customize.
Welcome to the Wrestling Core Podcast, a place to hear all the things you need to know to be successful in wrestling. I'm the host and show producer, Trey Horton.
And I'm the co-host, Nick DeStasio.
Today, we're going to dive into goal setting. This is the Wrestling Core Podcast.
Whew, that got me hyped.
Yeah, that was an intro created by a friend of mine. He's done really, really good work.
What's his name?
He goes by Rich Deeds on Instagram.
All right, so if you guys want to follow him, Trey said at the bottom, you can find the link to his IG handle and give him a follow.
Yeah, I put it in the show notes.
So the topic today we're going to be talking about is having the right goals, correct?
Yeah, I mean, goals are so important and so undervalued, especially in the sport of wrestling.
So you're telling me that you need direction. They don't need to be aimless, correct?
Right. I mean, this is really a speed versus vector debate. You know, you can go as fast as you want to on the speedometer, but if you don't have a direction, you're just spinning your wheels. And goals really, really help, especially young athletes, work in a direction that's going to force them to continue to grow.
Yeah, I totally agree that young athletes who set goals early on tend to have the most potential later on in the sport.
Yeah, and the biggest thing too is, you know, learning how to make good goals and being able to differentiate between good goals and bad goals. I'll go ahead and pose this question to you, Coach Nick. You know, what would you define as a bad goal?
I think not being clear on the specific goal in mind. Maybe it's just winning a region tournament, for example. Well, you know, be specific, more specific with that. Winning the region title at the end of the season. That's a long-term good goal instead of just saying winning region.
I feel like that's a really good layman's terms explanation, especially since most wrestlers don't study up on how to make goals or anything like that. And most coaches and most programs don't even talk about how to make goals or really how to break it down. And I was blessed to have a coach that broke it down for me and using the SMART method, which is specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. If you can make your goal all 5 of those metrics, then it will be what I would consider a good goal. Now, that's not to say, you know, it can't still be a bad goal if you're just, you know, making it to make it if you don't believe in it yourself, because ultimately you have to believe in the goals you're setting for yourself. But Coach Nick's right. I mean, if you just say you want to win the region tournament, you know, you're not being time-based and, you know, it's not specific. If you want to be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based, you would say, I will win the region tournament by the end of my junior year, and that would be a good version of that goal. What do you think about that?
You know, that would be a great goal considering I didn't even win region until my senior year. So it's always been a standard goal. I've always been making my goals year after year after year. You know, I didn't really even start, you know, varsity until my sophomore year.
How many times do you remake your goals?
So really, I didn't really make my goals up until I actually started believing in myself and thinking that this was the sport that I belonged in. So if anyone's listening here, if you guys have that purpose too, and you guys are having trouble finding that, you know, using the SMART method is definitely a way to hold yourself accountable precisely where you need to be at. I never had that. It was just make varsity in the beginning, and then towards the end, by my senior year, it was, you know, winning region, winning county, you know, having specific structured goals in mind.
Yeah, and whenever you made those goals, if I remember correctly, you didn't write them down or anything like that. And that's one of the things that I was taught, was to write your goals down and put them somewhere where you see them. So that, especially during wrestling season, you wake up and it's one of the first things you see. It's one of the last things you see. One of the things that my coach told me was, when you make your goals, you make sure they're always visible, out of sight, out of mind. And whenever you do make those goals, you always go back and check them. Is it still attainable? Is it still specific enough? Is it still within the time period that you said you wanted to complete it by? Sometimes you'll make a goal and you'll say, oh, I'm going to score a dozen back points at this tournament this weekend. Well, it may turn out that everyone you wrestle is a hoss on bottom and they all get out from underneath you and you don't ride top at all. And you find out that, hey, you may just be a better neutral wrestler than you are a top wrestler. You may want to go back and revisit all of your goals that have to do with top, at least for the near and immediate future. It's not to say you want to give up on top, but sometimes instead of saying, oh, I'm going to score a dozen points on top at this tournament this weekend, you may reduce it and say, if I can score 6 points or 5 points on top this weekend, it becomes a little bit more attainable, because sometimes you will realize, based off the situation you're in, it's not always attainable or relevant anymore. And those are two very big key factors. A lot of people forget about their goals. They make them, they set them, and they never change them again.
Let me ask you something here aside. How did you handle not attaining some goals? What mentality developed from there?
Personally, I never took missing goals very well. I took it very personally. I worked very hard my entire wrestling career, dawn till dusk, all the time. And if I missed a goal, it broke me, and I found a way to either remake that goal or find another way to make it. Every year, my goal was to place at the state tournament, and I didn't place it till I was a junior. I was there all 4 years, under those lights, all 4 years of my high school career, and I didn't place till my junior year. Lost in the blood round my sophomore year. Had to pull myself together and figure out how am I going to make myself better? What am I going to do? What am I going to sow into my career to make it better? And that's actually, ironically, where I met your coach. Was that season. Your college coach, Coach Bedard. That's where I met him. Was at Elite Training Center whenever I decided I was going to start sowing even more time into my career, which in this case was wrestling even more during the week and seeing less of my family. So,
Yes, and if you guys do not know about Mr. Jeff Bedard, he is a animal. My goodness, he old school, grinding it out. Oh, just brought out the beast in you guys.
I loved wrestling for him. It was always the same playlist.
Yes, Johnny Cash, baby.
Ring of Fire.
Yes.
So whenever we talk about making your goals, we just talked about the basic metrics of goals, but there are really 3 key categories of goals, and it's going to sound really watered down and really simple, and it's that way on purpose, because you don't want to let your goals get too complicated either. You have short, medium, and long-term goals. Some outlets only talk about short and long-term goals. I actually disagree with that concept entirely. I don't believe that jumping straight from a short-term goal to a long-term goal, or 100 short-term goals to a long-term goal, is in the best interest of young athletes, especially since there are so many facets and different perspectives in the sport of wrestling, that you may need to push yourself in small ways in some places, but continue to push and work toward larger areas in others. The way I envision it is like you're climbing a ladder, but it's not a really long ladder. The ladder eventually ends, and then you've got to get onto the next ladder. Mm-hmm. And you may have to climb back down one ladder, move it, and climb again. And those medium goals are the end and start of every ladder. So, the difference between a short, medium, and long-term goal, a short-term goal would be like, I'm going to get a takedown this weekend at the tournament. Mm-hmm. A medium-term goal would be, I'm going to get 20 some odd takedowns, or whatever you want that metric to be, this month. And then a long-term goal would be, I will break the takedown record for my school this season. That's small goal, building up to medium goal, building up to long-term goal. But ultimately, the way I see it is it should be 3 or 4 small-term goals to every medium goal. So I may say I'm looking for 2 takedowns this weekend, but then I'm also going to have other goals, like I am going to try and get so many high crotches, or I'm going to look for so many blast doubles. And whenever you check off all those boxes for those short-term goals, it's like you're doing math. 2 plus 2 will equal 4. And, as long as you are mapping out a road for yourself and you're envisioning your path, you'll have something to walk on, a direction to go.
When I was competing, I mostly had short goals and long-term goals. The medium goals were never really touched to me. I never, like you said before, I never really had anything that had like goals all around me. I literally woke up and slept on my goals every night. And I know some people might have trouble with that, with things outside of wrestling, life in general. So keeping those things around you, do you think maybe having these short goals or long-term goals or even medium goals, put those around you too? Will that be ideal?
I do. I actually taped my goals to the wall of my wrestling room. So every day when I went to practice, I saw them. And, as we make our kids do that in the program that we coach for every year leading up to the state tournament. Seeing them all the time is important. And in another episode, we're going to talk about journals. And I really do believe that putting your next goal or next goals in your journal, or the things that you see or believe that are the most achievable for you in the moment, is important too, because not only are you looking at your goal, but how you're going to get there, what you did, et cetera, et cetera. And we'll get into that in another episode, but, reviewing them regularly, or what I call goal rechecks, is very, very important, because, again, being attainable, being relevant is more important than anything else that you could, any other metric that you could use to make that goal.
Okay.
Did you ever know anyone that made a negative goal?
I've heard of maybe some inexperienced wrestlers make a short-term angry goal, go out and hurt that person. Parents would say that with, maybe not, you go out there and hurt them. If they can't wrestle, they can't win. You think that's a pretty negative goal?
That's very negative. Way overboard negative. I need to have a talk with those parents. Especially since that's not what the sport's about. But, it is what it is, misinformation. But positive vibes are more important in this sport than in any other. There's nothing else anyone can tell you except that you should always have fun. And if your goals are negative and you don't have positive vibes about you, your career, and what you're doing in your room, then you need to sit back and reassess, how are you going to do it differently? Because the last thing you want to do is hate the sport, right? If you hated the sport, you wouldn't be coming back and coaching. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't be giving back, and that's what the sport's traditionally been all about, is giving back. There isn't a big book of wrestling like, football teams have playbooks. We have knowledge that's handed down from coach to coach, coach to wrestler, and then that ends up being coach to wrestler, and so on and so forth, and it gets passed around at camps. Sometimes we'll see some new technique, like we saw with John Smith come out of the blue with his low single, but it's very important that you stay positive, because otherwise you will end up falling out of the sport faster than anyone else. So, as an example of a negative goal, I knew a kid that had this goal. It was, I will only give up 2 takedowns this weekend.
So what makes that a negative goal?
So instead of thinking about how he is going to gain or what he is going to achieve, he's thinking about what he is not going to give up. So instead of growing, he's trying to stay still. So
Right.
anytime you make a goal, you're always looking to grow, always looking to improve. If your goals are about staying still and not moving, then you've got speed, but no direction.
So it's almost like survival, right? At that point.
Right. It's a survival mindset. And, if all you're trying to do is survive, there's always somebody that's down there working to improve and beat you. There's always that underdog, that kid that's in the practice room, sowing and sowing and sowing and sowing, hoping that his hard work and effort and realistically his goal setting will pay off.
Yeah. And so that also happens with dual tournaments too, especially when it gets close to, dual regions and dual state. There's a lot of negative goals that are there that are presented, don't get pinned, don't get teched. Those are negative goals too, right?
Right. And, you bring up a really good point about team stuff, because you can write as many individual goals as you want to, but realistically, wrestling's just as much a team sport as is an individual sport. Cale Sanderson said that, your teammates, your guys you wrestle with, are the closest friends you'll have your entire lifetime. I'm paraphrasing that quote, but it's holds so true. I mean, look at you and I. I mean, we were wrestling partners in high school, and to this day, what is this? 10 years later?
Yeah. 10 years.
We hang out and talk all the time still, like we just met yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. Goodness gracious.
But getting back to the team goals, you and your teammates have to come up with team goals too. Whether that's, hey, let's win this duel, or this weekend, or hey, let's place as a team at this duel this weekend, or hey, as a team, let's collect 15 takedowns. You, the athlete, will know better about your team and what your team goals need to look like as compared to us, especially since we're in a very different environment. Not every team's the same, or what their coach teaches the same. So that comes down to relevance and, what you and your team, and sometimes it's just the team captains coming together and saying, hey, what do we want to do this season? And, those are goals that definitely you're going to want to run by your coach. But, if you run those by your coach and he approves, or he doesn't want to add on additional stuff, who knows? He may take those goals that you had, print them out on a piece of paper and stick them on your wall for everyone to see.
Yeah. That would be a great team leader. There's a lot going into that, and team is so important to me. I'm definitely a team player. I love the sport of the individual aspect of wrestling, but also the team sport, because you have a great team. These are your brothers, these are your sisters going into battle with you. So having those team goals are so important, not only for that season, but also throughout your life. Those are life-term memories that you'll never forget.
Those team memories were some of the best memories I have. It was a freaking blast, me and my teammates making our goals and our team goals and plastering them up on the wall of the wrestling room, and it was a memory I'll never forget. But we definitely did talk about a lot today. It was a very, very dense episode. Coach, you think you can give us a quick recap?
Yeah. So basically what we talked about today was we used the SMART method, being specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based, and using that SMART method for our short-term goals, our medium goals, and our long-term goals. And with those goals for our individual needs, we also need for our teams too. And mostly that'll come from just being positive, keeping those positive vibes, not only for yourself and your mind, your mentality, but also for those that are around you that support you. And also rechecking your goals constantly, and maybe even adjusting them, because they might not always fit the agenda. And so, Trey?
Challenge time.
We want to challenge you. This is your chance to take a big step in your career, in your future, to plot your own path, your own course. Start making your goals today. Start small. Make a goal to complete your goals. Word of advice from the guys who have been there. Make your long-term goal. Make a handful of medium-term goals to meet that long-term goal. And then make a whole bunch of short-term goals to fulfill those medium goals. Have your buddy look at your goals. get suggestions, advice. Your peers, your coaches, friends, parents, start making your goals today.
Well, so I'm super pumped about what we're going to be doing next. So what exactly could we be doing?
Dude, this episode was so much fun.
It really was.
It was a blast, and I can't wait for next week because it's going to be one of my favorite topics.
Well, what is it?
Oh, my favorite topic. Journals.
Uh-oh.
Super, super important. It's almost as important as goals. But, if you have a good journal, your goals are inside your journal.
Yeah.
But, if you're more than a 1 season or a 3-month wrestler, your journal is going to be more important than anything else that you have in your wrestling bag. I buy $60 shoes and buy 10 journals. I mean, it's that important.
Yeah.
I'm super excited. I know that we kind of briefly touched on it here today with this episode, but it's something that took my career to the next level, and it's something that was preached to me by a lot of people throughout my career, and one of my coaching mentors that really changed the way I thought about the sport. And I really am excited to share that with you guys next week.
All right. Well, so once again, next week we're going over journal writing. We look forward to you guys listening, and please subscribe, and we'll talk to you guys later.